So, let's start where everyone starts, inside the circle, with the rhyme the way childhood hands it down. The modern version goes, "Ring around the Rosie, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down." You probably learned it before you learned what plague meant. You sang it in a playground ring, hands linked, spinning until the world blurred. And when the last line came, you dropped to the grass laughing. Not because it was sad, but because falling was the point. It's one of those songs that seems welded to childhood, like recess itself. Nobody teaches it formally. It's just there, passed hand to hand, class to class, decade to decade, like a tiny inheritance no one remembers receiving. And yet, at some point, most of us heard the same whisper. This isn't just a game. This is a song about death. The plague story is so common now that people say it like a fact. A teacher tells a class. A parent repeats it. A documentary drops it as trivia. And once you hear it, the rhyme changes color. Rosie becomes a rash, the red ring on the skin. Posies become herbs stuffed in pockets, a desperate folk shield against infection. Ashes becomes cremation, or sneezing, or the ash-gray residue of bodies burned in heaps. And "we all fall down" stops being laughter. It becomes the punchline of a mass grave. It's tidy. It's cinematic. It makes the rhyme feel like a ghost from the Black Death or the Great Plague of London. And the myth is seductive because it does something rare. It turns a child's song into a secret doorway, a trivial thing into an artifact, a playground circle into a circle of mourning. But secrets only matter if they're true. So tonight, we do what folklore almost never allows. We check the dates. Here's where the story snaps. The first time "Ring Around the Rosie" appears in print in English is 1881, in Kate Greenaway's Mother Goose collection. That's not a typo. Not 1681, not 1581, not 1381. The late Victorian age. Gaslight. Trains. Photography. The world of cholera and empire and penny dreadfuls, not medieval plague pits. We do have reports of children singing circle versions in the mid-1800s, and hints that something like it existed a few decades earlier. But even those are still centuries removed from the plagues people say the rhyme describes. If this were truly a Black Death relic, carried orally from the 1300s, you'd expect to see it show up in diaries, sermons, pamphlets, or plague memoirs long before the 19th century. Those sources are full of songs, prayers, and street cries. None of them mention this rhyme. The plague theory doesn't die here, but it becomes a suspect. We shouldn't dismiss the plague reading just because it's late. Folklore can be old and still appear late on paper. Oral tradition is a river that sometimes runs for centuries before anyone bottles it. So let's take the plague reading seriously for a moment. England endured waves of plague. The Black Death in the 1340s, the Great Plague of London in 1665. Villages emptied, cities locked down. A country learned the vocabulary of mass death. If children were going to sing about it, even unconsciously, the imagery fits well enough to feel inevitable. A ringed rash, flowers against pestilence, bodies reduced to ash, everyone falling. It's the kind of interpretive story we want to be true, because it makes the rhyme carry history like a hidden load. But the real question isn't could it fit? It's Did anyone say it fit before the 20th century? And the answer, as far as scholars can tell, is no. The plague interpretation only becomes widespread after World War II, and folklorists consistently note there's no early evidence tying the rhyme to plague. That means the plague story is not ancient memory. It's modern meaning. The gap matters because it tells you what kind of thing this rhyme is. If a song is a trauma relic, like a battlefield hymn, you'll usually see it close to the trauma. People sing what they need to survive. They write down what they fear forgetting. But Ring Around the Rosie doesn't appear near the plague. It appears in a world that has already mythologized the plague into a dark romance. A world where Victorians loved moral fables, Gothic doom, and the eerie idea that children unknowingly carried old horrors in their games. And even the lyrics don't line up cleanly with plague realities. Plague rashes weren't neatly rosy rings in the way the myth suggests. Sneezing isn't even a signature symptom of bubonic plague. Many early versions don't include sneezing at all, when a theory requires a perfect mapping. But the actual tradition keeps slipping away from it. That's usually a sign the theory came later, after the words had already drifted. So, if it isn't a plague relic, what is it? The clue is hiding in its folk ID number, because folklore has catalog numbers the way bones have names. Folklorists group this rhyme under Roud Index 7925, a family of circle game songs spread across Europe with shifting words and actions. That matters because it means Ring Around the Rosie is not a single ancient text that survived unchanged. It's a shape, a ring game, a melody and emotion with lyrics that mutate like living tissue. In some European versions, the line isn't ashes, it's hush, 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 or a chew, or something else entirely. Some end with children squatting, some with curtsying, some with a child in the middle who chooses who falls. Some don't fall down at all. In other words, the circle exists first. The words are clothes that keep changing. And that changes what meaning can be. If the same game carries 100 lyric skins, the meaning is less likely to be a single historical event, and more likely to be something older and simpler. A children's ritual of motion and collapse. Imagine the oldest version, not on paper, but in practice. Children form a ring, an ancient shape humanity keeps returning to. A ring dance is one of the oldest known social games, a way to rehearse unity, rhythm, belonging. The lyrics are there to pace the turning. The chant turns the moving into a spell, and at the end there's always some kind of drop. A squatting, a bowing, a falling, because every game wants a sudden turn, the moment that makes everyone laugh. Falling down in children's culture isn't death, it's comedy, it's surrender to gravity together, it's trust. So the rhyme may have started as something like this. A ring dance chant about flowers, pockets, and tumbling. Pleasant images that match a springtime game. In traditional European culture, roses and posies usually signal joy, love, and festival, not disease. It doesn't mean the rhyme is innocent. It means innocence was its first language. Which raises the real question. If the rhyme began mundane, how did it become one of the most famous plague legends on Earth? This is where the episode turns inside out, because this isn't just a story about a rhyme. It's a story about how we make folklore darker than it was. After World War II, Europe and America were soaked in new kinds of mass death. Cities burned, bodies stacked, disease still hovered in memory. People were trying to explain ruins to children and childhood to themselves. In that climate, Ring Around the Rosie was ready to be reheard. The interpretation appears in the mid-20th century, spreads through schools, trivia books, and television, and by the 1950s it's treated as common knowledge. Why did it spread so fast? Because it solved a craving. It turned a simple nursery game into proof that trauma leaks into play. It offered a neat moral. Children have always been haunted. History has always been singing in our mouths. And once a folklore explanation is emotionally satisfying, it doesn't matter if it's late. It becomes true by repetition. Folklorists have a word for this kind of thing: metafolklore, folklore about folklore. A myth we attach to a tradition to make it feel older, darker, more meaningful than the evidence allows. Ring Around the Rosie isn't a plague song. It's a plague story we told about a song. Here's the uncomfortable part. We didn't discover the plague, meaning by accident. We wanted it. Adults are uneasy with childhood being pure. It feels too fragile, too temporary, so we lace it with shadows. We tell ourselves that even play has always been a rehearsal for disaster. There's comfort in that, because if children once danced through plague unknowingly, then maybe we're not the first generation to survive horror with a song on our lips. The plague story also flatters us. It makes us feel clever for knowing a secret. It makes the past feel like a puzzle we solved. And it gives death a place in a rhyme where it can be held safely. Not screamed, not prayed, just sung, in a circle with hands linked. When grown-ups repeat the plague myth to kids, they're not just teaching trivia. They're passing down a way to look at history, as a shadow under everything, as a secret waiting to be found, which is a very Lore&Ruin thing to believe. Even if the plague reading is wrong historically, it tells the truth psychologically. We do this with stories all the time. We retrofit meaning backwards. We take ambiguity and pin it to the most powerful memory we can find. And in plague lore, the most powerful memory is not the illness itself. It's the image of everyone falling at once. A society collapsing together. A ring breaking. A moment where the rules vanish and all bodies return to dust. A children's rhyme ending in collapse feels like the perfect miniature of that fear. So, the plague, meaning stuck because it felt like something history would hide in a nursery. Not because it was there first, because it was there last, because we put it there. There's a strange irony in how this myth works. The rhyme itself is modest, shifting, hard to date. It belongs to children. It doesn't ask to be a museum relic. But adults keep dragging it into history's darkest rooms, not to harm it, but to give it power. And maybe that's what folklore is at its deepest level. Not a fixed inheritance, but a negotiation between generations. Children sing what feels fun. Adults hear what feels true. The rhyme becomes a bridge between those needs. So when you hear Ring Around the Rosie now, you're hearing two songs at once. The old ring game of flowers and tumbling, and the modern ghost story of plague. Neither can fully erase the other. They spin together, hand in hand, in the same circle. Ring Around the Rosie teaches a quiet lesson. Sometimes the past doesn't haunt us because it left a song behind. Sometimes it haunts us because we needed a song to carry it. We turned a playground dance into a plague elegy because we wanted proof that history never stops touching childhood. But if one nursery rhyme can be repainted by fear, so can others. Some songs are darker than we were told. Some are simpler, and some become battlegrounds for the meanings we keep arguing over. Next time on Lore and Ruin, Ba Ba Black Sheep, the nursery rhyme. America still sings, and the dark origin hiding in plain sight.